Hey, welcome to episode 4 of Ads from the Week, a little show I do where I share vintage newspaper ads that I've clipped from either the San Francisco Examiner or the Oakland Tribune that are concurrent with the previous work week, this being the week of Monday, July 6th through to Friday, July 10th, 2026. So let's start our journey in the Wayback Machine, shall we? Everybody get comfortable, buckle up, and ready? Our first stop, July 6, 1975, and William Castle's production of Bug starts on Wednesday. Now, this movie did not ping my pop culture radar until 1976, when I saw it on a double bill with Godzilla vs. Megalon at the Alameda 3. The order in which the two were screened is a memory long buried under the inexorable sands of time, but I do remember being freaked out and grossed out by Bug, while also being off-put by the broad cartoonishness of Godzilla vs. Megalon. But Bug scared me, and it was weird enough to just freak me out. For a time, the theatrical one sheet for Bug hung in my bedroom. There are even some Polaroids or snapshots of me sitting at my desk and play acting as a working writer. I had a little typewriter, portable typewriter in front of me, and I was doing it. I think I borrowed one of my parents' reading glasses and stole their cigarettes, because all writers smoke at their desk, so I'm like there. I don't know if those photos still exist. They might be in a box somewhere around here. I don't know. But if I do find them, I'll share them at one point. Why not? Now, in the early to mid 1980s, I did manage to get my hands on a paperback edition of Thomas Page's source novel, The Hephaestus Plague, and read it. While my fuzzy memory of the book remembers there being a tad larger scope to the firebug invasion, I was surprised that the core story beats of the novel seemed to have survived and been retained for this film adaptation. Another little irony, because everything seems to be connected. The director of Bug was Jeannot Swar, who would a few years later direct Jaws 2. Of course, Steven Spielberg had directed Jaws. Both men worked on Night Gallery. In fact, I think Swar took over for Spielberg for one of the episodes of Night Gallery. Make Them Laugh, I think it was. But I'd have to double check my Night Gallery companion for that. That just occurred to me. I'm going off into the weeds from my own notes. Now, from 1975, we're going to bop back some 44 years to July 6th, 1931. And here we have an ad from the Oakland Tribune for the August 1931 issue of True Story magazine. Now, the handful of sources that I am currently checking for information about these old pulps and magazines had no information about this particular issue. So I was not able to find out who wrote the advertised story, his own law. But what I can do is let you know that this is the story of a young and beautiful, of course, woman named Mary Willits. A woman who is living in a desolate cabin located far into the mountains. I don't know which mountains, it just says mountains. So it was probably in a state where there was mountains, which is probably about 20 different states in the United States. Mary's yearnings for human companionship are granted when she finds a strange man near her cabin. A landslide trapping and crushing his legs. Mary pulls and tugs his mammoth, half-conscious body to her cabin, sets his splintered legs, dresses his wounds, and nurses him, day and night. She grew to worship his bravery, his defiance of pain. Here was a man worth loving, a man who was growing to love her. Then, the confession. Mary, he said, I love you. I got to talk. That morning, the rock, I was hiding money. You see, well, you don't want a robber. You don't want a train robber for a husband. Oh, Bob, she cried. She threw herself on his chest. You're mine forever. God sent you to me. Or else he'd have taken you out there. Don't, honey, he replied. Remember the law. It's out to get me, even if I've quit the game for good. The law? She hurled back. I saved you from death, death that defies all law of man. You're mine, mine. I'll fight the law. Nothing can take you, ever, ever, she screamed. Then, at the door, there came a crash. Another man. On his chest, the gleam of a sheriff's star. Now, if you want to know how this ends, I found the magazine for about 15 or 20 bucks over on eBay, and you can go check it out if you're curious. And I know some of you just might be. Now we're going to bop forward. Let's see, I'm going to try to map it. 57 years to July 7th, 1988. And Phantasm 2 starts tomorrow. Well, Phantasm 2 was one of several 1988 summer horror films that underperformed at the box office. As fun and atmospheric as Phantasm 2 is, general audiences were just not all that interested in seeing a spooky carnival ride of a movie in July. Maybe, just maybe, if the film had been pushed to late September or early October, maybe it might have done better. Maybe, but who knows, really. I don't. But what I do know is that this movie is fun. The higher budget, which was an estimated $3 million, not only allowed for better special effects and production design, but may have given writer, producer, director Don Coscarelli a tad more of the old shooting schedule. And I think it shows, because the movie also looks great. I was able to see this opening weekend on the big screen and had a blast. The friend I was with, however, did not. He hated the movie. So it goes. But he had never seen the first one, so he had no idea what was going on. The one downside here is that Universal, who was releasing the picture and footing the bill, wanted a more established actor to play the lead character of Mike. So A. Michael Baldwin was switched out for James LaGrosse. This was the one and only time that Baldwin did not play the character of Mike. Now we're going to shoot back 14 years to July 7th, 1974, and the crime caper comedy 99 and 44 100% Dead starts Wednesday. Now, this is a movie I do remember seeing on the big screen, but all I remember about it is the weird title, which was a riff on the Ivory Soap ad that I don't remember. And the opening and closing images of people who have had their feet encased in cement blocks getting dropped into the waters of a harbor area. Now, because this was a comedy, The bodies littering the harbor area's seabed are all perfectly preserved and camera ready, no matter how long they've been down there. So there's no rot, no algae, no fish nibbling, everything. They're just like in pristine condition. Um, the only other thing I learned while doing a cursory memory check verification was that the title of the film was changed to Meet Harry Crown in markets outside of the US, as the ad copy joke would not travel to areas where said ad copy was not used and therefore not recognizable. Also of note is that Bradford Dillman was in this as well, which has him making his second appearance in films this week after Bug, which would actually come out a year after this film, to a day. So he might have actually been working on Bug when this movie opened in theaters. All right, we're going to bop forward 5 years to July 8th, 1979, and Dracula starts Friday. Thanks in very large part to the massive success of the Edward Gorey designed revival of the Dean Balderston penned play, both on Broadway and as a national tour, Universal decided to dust off its gothic horror property that launched its famous monster lineup and release this all-new cinematic version of the classic story in 1979. There were also three or four other Dracula movies that came out during the summer of 1979. That depends on whether or not you count Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire. Love at First Blight. Love at First Blight. No. Love at First Bite. A rom-com take on Dracula that starred George Hamilton as the Count, preceded this film's release by, I think, 3 or so months. The Seven Brothers Meet Dracula, a delayed by 5 or so years retitled release of Hammer Films' Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires and their last movie to feature Dracula, would open on the Wednesday before this film's release. Now, I didn't see this on the big screen for whatever reason. Probably because the movie looked old to me, in that it was set in the 19th century, and 12-year-old me preferred movies and stories set in time periods where there was electricity, indoor plumbing, and motor cars. I was disinterested in seeing this on the big screen, which is too bad for me. But, I think I would have liked it. But also, I was more excited about Alien, which was also currently in theaters. And that was my choice, the movie I really wanted to see. I did finally catch up with the film during a Halloween night sleepover with a whole bunch of friends. An independent paid TV outlet had an awesome marathon lined up. Now, what I remember being shown that night, it started off with the animated film Wizards. It was followed by the Amityville Horror, then Halloween and the Fog, and finally Dracula. There might come a time when I might be able to fact check this, because the TV listings may have this station, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to really kind of because I would hang out with this friend a lot. We'd watch a lot of programs on that independent cable outlet. All right, we're gonna stay on the same day to July 8th, 1979, because the Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again starts Wednesday. Now, I do have a fuzzy memory. A lot of my memories are fuzzy. This is like 40, 50 years ago, of seeing the first Apple Dumpling Gang movie at some point. And I know it starred Bill Bixby as a man that was trying to wrangle some juvenile delinquents in the Old West. They were the titular Apple Dumpling Gang. I don't know if I saw it on the big screen. I probably saw it on The Wonderful World of Disney. But I do have a stronger memory of giving this movie a pass because Bixby and the actual Apple Dumpling Gang were not in it. No, this time around, the second fiddle comedic relief actors that were played by Don Knotts and Tim Conway were given center stage and the moniker of the Apple Dumpling Gang. And that was something I just couldn't countenance. Also, I was 12, I was starting, oh, that's for kids, man. It's a Disney movie. That's how I remember it, at least. I might watch it at some point, but that point isn't anytime recently or anytime in the future. I don't know. I may watch it. I may watch it because it's Knotts and Conway. I'm sure that the movie has some pretty funny moments, and there is, of course, a moment where Don Knotts and Tim Conway do drag because it was 1979 and drag was still funny back then for most America. All right, we're gonna bop forward three years to July 9th, 1982, and the slasher monster movie Humongous starts today. I did not see this on the big screen. I did see it on home video. A friend and I rented it along with Friday the 13th Part 3, I think. Or was it 2000 Maniacs? Or maybe it was all three. I don't know. So, having struck a modest vein of box office gold with the 1980 Halloween cash-in Prom Night, director Paul Lynch did make a somewhat quick return to the same exploitation well for this 1982 monster-themed slasher. Now, while it's not technically a bad film, I mean, it looks like a film that was made by an actual filmmaker. It is hampered by a somewhat paint-by-the-numbers body count script that mashes together plot structure and settings of like Friday the 13th Part 2 and the Grim Reaper of all things. But the only things missing here are some gnarly and inventive deaths and an impressive looking visage for the titular humongous. Which, actually then leaves little to nothing of interest left to hold the viewer. Now, I did find out that because I knew the name Paul Lynch, I recognized from like television and everything. So I wanted to check I went to the IMDb and checked his listings and found that he, between Prom Night and Humongous, Lynch directed 4 segments for the short-lived Night Gallery-style anthology series Dark Room, which was hosted by James Coburn and ran on ABC, and which I saw just about every episode except the first during its brief network run. They put it up against Dallas, and that just was a dead zone. That just Friday night against Dallas. The ratings were somewhere in the sub-basement. But the segments that Paul Lynch directed for Dark Room are Stay Tuned, We'll Be Right Back, which was from the first episode. Needle Point. Then there was one called Daisies, which was based off a short story by Frederick Brown, I believe. And since I have that Frederick Brown anthology over there on Mount Sodomku, and I do intend to do more from page to screen reviews, I'm looking forward to reading that story and watching the segment of Dark Room that this was in, because I've got a bootleg of the show. And finally, the fourth one was called Who's There? Lynch would move between theatrical features, such as the 1986 drama Bullies, and episodic television. Now, of interest to me would be the 6 segments he directed for the mid-'80s return revival of The Twilight Zone. During its network television run, he directed the segments Um, Examination Day, based off a um, Henry Slessor story. A Message from Charity. Also, Wong's Lost and Found Emporium. Need to Know. Shadow Play. The Storyteller. And The World Next Door. He also directed three half-hour episodes for the productions that were done for the syndication package of the Twilight Zone when, like with Night Gallery, they re-edited and cut it so it would be a half hour. And those three episodes were The Crossing, The Hunters, and the last episode film, the last one, which was Crazy as a Soup Sandwich, which was written by Harlan Ellison and starred Anthony Franciosa. I would also like to seek out the two episodes he directed for the Ray Bradbury Theater, which were Marionettes Incorporated and The Long Years. He directed two episodes of the short-lived revival of Dark Shadows that aired briefly in 1991. He did 5 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. He directed The Naked Now, which was a remake of The Naked Time and the series, I think, second episode. So from the first season where it was like, oh, what's this spam? Star spam, am I right? Then a binary title episode called 11001001. Then he also directed Unnatural Selection, A Matter of Time, and The First Duty. Duty. He directed 5 episodes of RoboCop. There was a series based off RoboCop, evidently. Those were The Future of Law Enforcement, parts 1 and 2, Trouble in Delta City, Officer Missing, and Faces of Eve. He directed 2 episodes of the 90s reboot of The Outer Limits, which I believe ran on Showtime, The Second Soul, and Dark Matters. I think The Second Soul might be the one where the aliens come and revive the dead to live again. Again, I have to double check on that. I should have double checked. He also directed 8 episodes of FX, the series. So there was a series based off FX, the movie, with Brian Brown, is that his name? And Brian Dennehy. Where was I? Let me. Okay, yeah, 4 episodes of Poltergeist: The Legacy. 2 episodes of Xena Warrior Princess, and he directed 3 episodes of Sliders during the 4th and 5th seasons. Those episodes were Net Worth, Please Press 1, and Requiem. I did double check also. An incomplete list of some of the films and television work that screenwriter William Gray is credited with includes work on the 1980 ghost story classic The Changeling, starring George C. Scott, the aforementioned Prom Night. He also wrote or worked on the Chuck Norris action flick An Eye for an Eye, The Philadelphia Experiment, and Black Moon Rising. He also wrote 2 episodes of The Hitchhiker, which was an HBO anthology series, I believe. Those were Joker and Fashion Exchange. He also wrote 2 episodes of the 90s relaunch of Dark Shadows and 3 episodes apiece for RoboCop and Beastmaster. One of those episodes was directed, which was Trouble in Delta City, I believe, was directed by Paul Lynch. So they worked together pretty regularly. Now, what was Humongous showing with when it opened? This was at a time when double bills were starting to go out of favor. Some, in first-run theaters, you didn't have double bills in first-run theaters anymore. They used to be pretty standard, but not anymore. The second run in the grindhouses, and Humongous opened in a couple of first-run theaters, but predominantly second-run theaters and grindhouses. It was an exploitation, smash-and-grab horror release. So, At the Roxy, which was an Oakland grindhouse, Humongous was on a triple bill with The Seduction and Beyond the Fog, which was actually a retitled reissue of 1972's Tower of Evil, which is also known as Horror of Snape Island. And The Seduction was just from Avco Embassy. Although by now I think Avco Embassy no longer existed, it was just Embassy Pictures. The Parkway had it paired with Escape from New York. And Humongous would rampage solo at the first run theaters that were the Festival Cinemas in Hayward and the Regency Cinema in Pleasant Hill. Now, 10 years? Oh, yeah, we're going back a decade now to July 9th, 1972. And the spaghetti western Duck, You Sucker starts Wednesday. Now, this is also known as A Fistful of Dynamite, which is actually a better and more appropriate title than Duck, You Sucker. I think the legend has it that Sergio Leone had convinced himself that the phrase Duck, You Sucker was just a huge popular slang in the United States, which is why they were using it. I don't know if that's true or not, but it also kind of sounds true. Another title for this movie was Once Upon a Time in the Revolution, because it's kind of like the middle portion of his fairy tale trilogy, which was kind of like Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in the Revolution, and Once Upon a Time in America. And this is an acerbically tongue-in-cheek Western that is set during the Mexican Revolution. And I think it's interesting that it shares the same jaundiced view of revolutions as Dario Argento's The 5 Days did. If you want, you can watch both movies back to back and just compare the impassioned speech that's snarled by Juan Miranda, who's played Rod Steiger's character. He snarls at John Mallory's, which is James Coburn's character, about telling him all about revolutions and everything. You want to know about revolution? Shh, don't shh. You want to know about revolution? I'll tell you about the revolution. The people who read books come to the people who don't read books. He just goes off on this big, huge thing. And you take that speech and you compare it with the final line that was delivered by Canazo, who was played by Adriano Salentano in The 5 Days. And yeah, you'll see. Because I think, both Argento and Leone were, children of World War II and of Mussolini and revolutions. And, they had a very different view of this than what what we in the United States have. So they're interesting films, and I think they're both really well worth seeing. And Ennio Morricone's score is just hilarious. Again, this is I hesitate to say it's a comedy, but it's definitely tongue in cheek, but it's also a very dry, very dark comedy. It's not broad by any. This is a very yeah. So we're going to shoot back now. I think this looks to be 14 years? Maybe? Yeah. To July 10th, 1958. And there will be a sneak preview of the new science fiction thriller, The Fly, tomorrow night. And I have to say, that's a rather impressive looking roster of Hollywood ghouls that's going to be attending tomorrow night's studio sneak preview of The Fly. Although I do have a sneaking suspicion that the Invisible Man might have been the subject of a no-show joke of some kind at some point. They're like, oh, I guess he didn't show up, and then something falls over. And like, oh, there he is. Unless they had some dude wrapped up in bandages with dark glasses and everything milling about. But yeah, that sounds like a fun time. Although The Fly would be released as part of a double bill, with a killer space fungus flick called Space Master X7. This sneak preview is placed in as a substitution for the movie Beautiful but Dangerous, which means the co-hit, which was the co-hit for the Gregory Peck Western The Bravados, which you could watch before or after The Fly, or just watch it a second time. They didn't kick you out of the theater. So, yeah. Now we're going to shoot forward 32 years, I think, to July 10th, 1990, which is our last stop. And The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, the first and only starring role for controversial comedian Andrew Dice Clay, who was making an attempt at grabbing the brass ring of film stardom. Well, it starts tomorrow. There's three things about this movie that get it filed away in my head. The first would be, it is the second big budget theatrical feature directed by Rennie Harlin, who I would know at that time from the low budget horror flick Prison, which was like 1987, I think, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, which is from like 1988. But both The Adventures of Ford Fairlane and Die Harder, were released in the month of July 1990, within weeks of each other. I mean, yeah, I think Die Hard 2 came out first at the very beginning, around the 4th. And this came out like a week or two later, or the next week, which is insane. But Die Hard 2 was a hit, and this movie cratered. Turns out, being an obnoxious vulgarian stand-up comedian, while that might have sold out some stadiums in the 90s, it didn't do jack for getting people into movie theaters. Now, outside of Harlan's directing doubleheader, the only things about this movie that I remember are the Wayne Newton spiking the punch gag, which is shown in the trailer, and that Robert Englund it shows up as an evil henchman. Obviously they enjoyed working together on The Dream Master, so when Harlan was doing this movie, he says, "Hey Bob, you want to do a movie without Freddy makeup?" And Englund was like, "Hell yeah, I didn't want to sit in a makeup chair for 38 hours." And the only other thing then was a post-credit koala bear gag. But none of that really makes me inclined to give this movie a second viewing. I mean, like a lot of shtick comedians, when the shtick grew tired, he couldn't really, Andrew Dice Clay couldn't transition out of that. I think he's a pretty decent actor. I've seen him in a couple of things. I think he was in Blue Valentine, and he was in Star Is Born, and I did notice he had something wrong. I thought maybe he had a stroke, but it turns out I believe that he had an attack of Bell's palsy that partially paralyzed his face. But yeah, he's still working, but he's not anywhere near as huge as he was back in the 90s, if at all. I don't even think he's a stand-up comedian anymore. If he is, I'm surprised if he was, he would be probably playing at whatever. What is that place in Austin? The Mothership? Is that what Rogan does? I don't follow. I don't follow that guy. I just, but I think that's it. But yeah. Hey! And yeah, that ends our adventure this week in movie ads, or just ads in general for books, movies. Eventually, other things will pop up, but right now I'm focusing on books and movies and what have you. But yeah, our journey this week is ended. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know I slubbed up a lot. I'm still getting used to doing something different than stuff of the week. So, but you know, until next time, let's all try to have a little fun, okay? Bye. Enough is never enough.